My name's Frank Thiel. I am here as the CTO of a company called Gigantor Technologies. And Gigantor Technologies is a silicon catalyst company. And in fact, that's how I got involved with the company. The idea behind it is to do AI inferencing at the edge, specifically for vision and object tracking models. And to do this using as parallelized a form of computation as you can use. So as I'll often say, it is the fastest way you could run through a given neural network model in the digital domain as you could implement, because it's basically as fast as you can clock in data, it's clocking data through the system. So, and I'll get to that, if I get to that later in the talk. There we go. So, and now this is working if I click. Okay, perfect. So if I click up, down, yeah. All right, so that's yours truly there. I am CTO of Gigantor, as I mentioned. I also have my own consulting company that works specifically with startups, and all of these are related to each other. And I'm an advisor for Silicon Catalyst. I've been in the semiconductor industry my entire career, which is, I'm afraid to say, over 4 decades in the semiconductor industry. And I've been general manager at Microsemi, at Zarlink. I've also run R&D for multiple companies. But most importantly, especially for my role now, is I still think of myself as a design engineer, which is how I started. So that's how I'm working with Gigantor now. Tarun talked a little bit about Silicon Catalyst. I won't go into it a lot. The one thing I'll just say is from the perspective of an advisor. And when I started years and years ago, not long after Silicon Catalyst started, I became an advisor. But now there's over 400 of us, I think. But the cool thing about it is you get exposed to so many different technologies, right? So I get to see multiple companies like Rick's here talking about SigmaSense and some of the most creative minds in the industry. And it occasionally comes up that, hey, there's a very good fit with one of the member companies. So in this case, Gigantor was looking for a CTO. I was there, wasn't doing anything. So no, anyway, so that was a good fit for me to join them. So I don't know if everybody's familiar with the Gartner hype cycle. Most people, Gartner came up this long ago, and it's a great way to look at technology. I think in the interest of time, I'm not going to go into it a bunch, but I did wanted to mention, what you're hoping for is technologies as they get invented to eventually go up and make it over to the plateau of productivity. I did want to point out that Edge AI, and this is the newest report from Gartner, is listed as about to come down into the trough of disillusionment. But most importantly, they have it with a white bubble, which says they predict that it should get to productivity within the next couple of years. So Edge AI is intrinsically related to the difference between training and inference in an AI model, right? So training is when you're teaching it something, inference is when it's doing something useful. Just a few facts. The hyperscalers, and we all know about all the money being spent on data centers and the power that's needed. Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Meta are spending more than $300 billion this year in building up data centers. OpenAI and SoftBank have announced plans to invest over $500 billion in the next 4 years. OpenAI, and Tarun mentioned the challenge of hardware for AI. And OpenAI, I think, has made deals with virtually every hardware company out there for that reason. The training demand is a front-loaded one. So for the next 2 to 5 years, we expect that to be taking up most of that capacity in the data centers. Some reports I've read have it 80% of the demand on a training center right now is training, with only 20% being spent on inference. But the trend is by 2030 to 2032, that should swap. And we get to the point where inference is most of what's happening. And it's important to remember, training is a cost. Inference is the return on investment. Technically, and I won't go into the training, I think anybody doing AI training is probably sick of seeing a gradient descent curve. But when you're training a model, this curve over on the right, you are trying to reach a minimum in multiple dimensions. This one's in 2 dimensions. You're working with floating point 32 weights and biases. You're using complex nonlinear functions. You're doing things like batch normalization and having to continually do back propagation and feedback. So as you try to descend that curve and get to that blue minimum there, that may require dozens, hundreds, thousands of runs to get there. Once that model's trained, and now we're going to start doing inference, and you're thinking about, well, I would like to implement this in an edge solution, you can start taking a trained model and doing things like reducing the precision. So it's very common for people to be working in int8 math, sometimes even int4 math for the weights and biases. You can bind the normalizations into the weights and biases, which reduces the need to do a lot of adds and multiplies, simplify the nonlinear activations with things like the ReLU function. So let's talk about YOLO, which is today still the most popular object tracking model if you look at the AI leaderboards. YOLO stands for you only look once. And probably most of us are familiar with this picture over on the right and what that looks like. YOLO, how it works is it goes through whatever you're feeding it, and it decides the objectness of something. So in other words, does something look like a recognizable object, puts a box around it, and then up on top, and I don't know if you can read this, but it will go and say, okay, that's got a 93% chance that's a car that's in the box, or a 82% chance that's a human in the box. That's why that's such a popular object tracking model. So if you look at where this picture was taken from, it's taken from the dashboard of a car. So you would ideally like this to be working in a very low power environment, something you could have that's either portable or at least is not draining your car battery in that case. And then let's come down to this picture on the lower left, which is a drone swarm. So an interesting fact, in the Ukraine war, the #1 piece of equipment that's spent daily is UAVs, unmanned aerial vehicles. Hundreds of these a day are used. So if you can envision not only that you can do inference fast enough that you can actually identify all of the drones that are in that picture, and you can work at multiple scales so that, if you're starting off with this red image, it may be hard to identify that this little dot's a drone. If you're working up at much higher resolution, you can see that it may indeed be a drone. That's one reason to be able to move very, very fast. And another reason to do lower power is flip it back around, is the drone itself trying to track a target and its ability to, as it's moving, to be able to do inference. I promise I won't do a lot of math here, but I just wanted to put in the fundamental equation behind a convolutional neural network is some variant of the one I have here. But it's basically weights times activations plus a bias. And in computer terms, you can think of any time you see a summation sign as a loop. That's what that means. So if you're having to run a loop all of the time, that is what burns gobs and gobs of power on a traditional GPU-based solution. A convolutional neural network is what's used in YOLO, ResNet, most of the popular vision models. It's very different than how large language models work, which use transformers and matrix multiplies. So just as an example, different flavors of the YOLO V8 model, which is a model we've actually been working with the last couple of weeks, just how many operations you have to perform. The smallest version of that model, the Nano, you've got 8.7 gigaflops per 640 by 640 frame that you're processing. 3.2 million weights and biases that are needed for that model. You go up to the server class version of this, one that would run in a data center, which is more precise, and that number goes up dramatically. So every company working for edge inference has been trying to crack this, has clever ways to solve it. I'm not going to go through exhaustively, and some of these are our competition, of course, but I'm not going to exhaustively go through them. But everybody's got a different approach to this, and most of them involved, hey, how do I take all those summations and vectorize that, right? How do I, and I will, the one I do want to talk about specifically is NVIDIA, because of course NVIDIA owns 90-some% of the AI market, biggest company in the world. Their approach is, long ago, they added these single instruction multi-thread processors. So I give one instruction, it gets distributed across a bunch of cores, and each of those cores can execute it on its own. They've got the CUDA, which has been probably the thing that helped make NVIDIA, in fact, the ability to use their GPUs for math, and the newer tensor cores. So everybody's taking an approach to this. With Gigantor, we took the approach of, hey, what if you took that and you disassembled that whole loop and created a parallel pipeline out of that operation? So one of the things in any processor is the von Neumann bottleneck, which means every modern computer architecture, for the most part, is based on a von Neumann architecture, which means you've got a processor, you've got memory, and you have to be going back and forth, getting instructions and getting data. Regardless of how you distribute that, it's got to run those operations. So if you can build a parallel pipeline, you literally get rid of that bottleneck completely. If you look at a typical GPU or TPU, it's applying weights to the features or the activations, and it's constantly having to go back and forth and swap data between that. So you can get inconsistent latency, drop frames, higher power demand, and it's speed limited in terms of inference. So if we look at how Gigantor's approaching this, you've literally created a parallel pipeline. So there's no drop frames because it literally can feed all the frame data straight through a state machine. It's got constant latency. And the latency, and we're talking for models like YOLO, the latency can be in the 100 microsecond range, something like that. Basically, it's the latency is set almost solely by what the model graph is. So the more layers you have, then the more steps you have to move through. So the nice graphic is this just goes quickly right through the pipeline. And so that's how Gigantor's approached this. Again, I'll say we're a Silicon Catalyst company, which is how I came to be involved with it. And with that, I think that's it for my talk. Thank you. If you have any questions, let me know. Yes. Yeah, that's a good question. So we are a seed stage startup, right? So we've realized this stuff in FPGAs right now. So now the next step is it would be good to build this into silicon.